Welcome to the Expert Edge. This is the show where we bring on experts in their fields of health and wellness practice, and we hear their stories and learn what they see working in the field of diabetes reversal and prevention. So I'm really happy to introduce today's guest, Einat Shinar. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, it's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here today. And for those of you that have not met her, Einat is a certified nutrition, mindset, and wellness coach. She helps women over 40 to balance their hormones, reduce stress, improve sleep, and release weight by working in harmony with natural rhythms of life. Through personalized one on one coaching, group programs, and workshops, she combines science based nutrition, mindset tools, and addresses the root causes of imbalance. She has advanced certifications in different areas of nutrition and loves to really help women to reclaim their energy, their confidence, and their long term health while actively preventing chronic disease and creating lasting wellness from the inside out. So, Ina, tell us a little bit about how did you get started with your interest in the intersection of lifestyle and health?
Of course, thank you for the beautiful introduction. So I got into this a decade ago, exactly 10 years ago, and it came from my own transformation. I was generally a thin, healthy person. As you know, in my younger years, the only time I needed to lose weight was really after having my two boys. And then in my early 40s, something happened. I just could not release the weight no matter what programs and diets I had done and tried. I would lose some weight, gain some weight. And it was really frustrating because it wasn't just the weight. I felt so overwhelmed and so exhausted, and nothing seemed to work. And then I found a coach who actually helped me lose the weight. But once that happened, my entire world shifted. I became more confident. I suddenly started sleeping better. I lost, the inflammation went down, and my horizon started to expand. I was a teacher at the time. I owned my own after school language program, and that's all I cared about, really. I was very happy. But with my transformation and that change in confidence, I started to become curious about nutrition and what happened to my body. And that's how I got into coaching. I just decided to go back to school when everybody around me started asking me, "What did you do?" And I just felt like I couldn't just share what I did without understanding deeply what was going on in my body. So I went back to school, got, my coaching certifications, as you mentioned earlier, and started coaching women. And 3 years ago, I actually retired from teaching and became a full-time coach after already having done coaching for about 8 years now. So it's been a very exciting route for me.
I love that. That's so interesting. And I love how so many of the people that we bring on this show, it's like something happened to them personally that they found that lifestyle, nutrition changes that they were making about the things they could control in their own lives had a really strong impact on their ability to move forward in their journeys to health and better wellness and mental health as well as physical health. And so it's always fun to hear how people got started on their own journey. Today, we're going to be talking about a link that I feel is often under talked about. So I love bringing experts on here to help us understand more about the links and the connections between how we sleep and metabolism and inflammation in our bodies, knowing that if we're dealing with blood sugar issues, it means that our metabolic systems are not optimized. We're usually dealing with insulin resistance and inflammation as some of those root causes. So, how did you get started looking into this area of sleep and metabolism?
So it's funny with sugar, blood sugar. I actually was a pre-diabetic a decade ago, and I was just shocked when I found out. And that's why I decided that I had to lose the weight and fix things. But sleep was something that I was always curious about. I never had sleep issues until I had my babies. And then my sleep became kind of disrupted. And along the years, especially after becoming a coach, I noticed the difference in the way that I was functioning in terms of alertness and energy and my appetite after those nights that were a little off. And I started making the connection between a good night's sleep and a really great day of eating and functioning and a bad night of sleep and the opposite. And I started really studying and researching it. And so in my practice, whereas in the beginning I focused on diet and nutrition and exercise, I started to shift more towards let's look into your sleep first and then talk about the other stuff. And holy moly, what a difference in the transformations of women who would look at me with this weird look. What are you talking about? I'm here to lose weight, not to sleep better. And that's how, with experimenting on my own sleep and finding ways to fix it or heal it, I started having this amazing routine that I could teach my clients and see their transformations as well.
Mm. I think that's so interesting. And as you started studying and learning more about the science behind sleep, what were some of those links that started popping up as to how sleep is connected to inflammation or metabolism and metabolic issues in our bodies?
So yeah, it's really fascinating to see how sleep impacts everything from brain function to blood sugar regulation to the immune system to weight management to even emotional control. And what I've noticed first thing was appetite. And so
Mm.
especially, most of my clients come to me for weight loss. And the things that I started studying was how does sleep affect our appetite? And what I've noticed is, and of course, research says that, right? When we have a poor night of sleep, our body senses that as a stressor. And that's where our
Mm.
fight and flight comes in. That increases cortisol in our blood. And when cortisol is high, that's when we have a surge of blood sugar coming from the liver, from the muscles, because our body is ready to escape whatever it is that we're trying to escape, right? But at the same time, with all that amount of sugar, the cells won't take it up. And so we are left with so much sugar in our blood, and that causes that insulin sensitivity to decrease. And I've noticed with my clients too, the other effect with the other hormones, because it's all about the hormones. Leptin, which is the satiety hormone, tends to go down when we have a poor night of sleep, and ghrelin, which is the appetite hormone, tends to go up. And what happens the next day after poor sleep? We are hungrier, but we're not just hungrier for anything. A person after a poor sleep does not really look for kale or lettuce. They'll be looking for the sugary stuff, the high carb, the pastries, and that's what happens to us the next day. Our insulin sensitivity might go down by about 40%. And that's
Wow.
crazy. I mean, we see that study after study. Poor sleep has an incredible effect on what the next day looks like in terms of not just energy, but how your body reacts to appetite and what happens to you the rest of the day. And so I was just blown away by that.
That is really interesting, and I don't think many people understand that. So we have these two hormones that help control our appetite. One that kind of makes us feel hungry, we're ready to eat. Another one that says, "Oh, you're full, you don't need any more," right? Ghrelin and leptin. And so what I'm hearing you say is that if I don't have a good night's sleep, my appetite stimulating hormone, the one that makes me want to eat more, that levels are high, so I have a good appetite. But the hormone that helps me feel like I'm satisfied, like I'm full, like I don't need to eat anymore, those levels are low. So it's hard to even get to feeling full and satisfied. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. And it doesn't even matter what kind of diet you're on. So even if you are on an amazing plan, you would see two people, one had a good night's sleep and the other one had a bad night's sleep. They'll be on the same diet, same day, but you'll see the person who had a poor night's sleep doing so much worse in terms of
Mm.
their glucose levels and insulin sensitivity going down majorly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I don't think most people realize that their insulin resistance and sensitivity levels can be affected as quickly as that, as quickly as one night of sleep. It can go up or down. And how would you define a good night's sleep?
Great question. So we talk about, let me start with this. Years ago,
Okay.
about a decade ago, we used to have about 8 hours of sleep. Now, studies show that most people sleep 6.5 hours or less. Okay. Yeah. And that truly affects everything. And so a good night of sleep is a night where you are sleeping between 7 and 8 hours. And we're not just talking about being in bed. We are talking about high quality deep sleep where you are going through all the stages of sleep. So for your listeners, if you're not aware, there's 4 stages of sleep. There's N1, which is the very light stage of sleep. It's the first one where our body is just starting to relax, the brain is relaxing. The second phase, N2, we are moving into deeper sleep. Our body temperature goes down, our brain starts to do a few things. And then phase three is already deep sleep. And this is the most important phase. This is where our tissues are being repaired. This is where muscles are being repaired. This is where glucose is regulated. Okay, this is where glucose is regulated. And there's other things that start happening at the same time. And if we do not get that deep sleep at that phase, then of course everything is going to start going down from there. The last phase is REM sleep. That's where dreams happen, and dreams are really important to process emotions.
Mhm.
And there's other stuff like memory consolidation. I would love to have people enjoy all these stages of sleep. And by the way, this takes about 90 minutes, and we get a few cycles of that at night. So if you're getting only 6 hours of sleep, you're only getting 4 cycles of that, right? We want to get a little more. And for most people, their sleep is disrupted. And unfortunately, guess where the disruption happens?
Getting up to the bathroom.
Getting out to the bathroom, and it's usually on stage three, where glucose
Mhm.
regulation happens, where tissue repair, where HGH, which is the human growth hormone, is secreted, which is super important for our health. And many people don't understand it's about getting the high quality, not just the amount, it's not just the quantity, it's the quality of your sleep. And one really important thing is going to bed early. Going to
Mhm.
bed early is very significant in the quality of your sleep, too.
So, what does that mean? Like, what is early? I have some people that tell me they can't fall asleep till 11, 12, sometimes 1 or 2 in the morning. So,
Hmm.
what is early?
Okay, we live in the Netflix era, and people definitely prioritize another episode of their favorite series on going to bed early. Early means 10 p.m. We see in recent studies that going to bed as early as 10 p.m., as opposed to after midnight, helps your body sleep better because remember that our body works really well in parallel to the circadian rhythm. And insulin uh, sensitivity is highest in the morning. But as the day goes by, insulin sensitivity decreases. And so, whatever happens in the evening in terms of food and sleep affects that. We want to make sure we're going to bed around 10 p.m. because stage three, which I just mentioned earlier, where all the tissue repair happens, where human growth hormone is secreted, and where blood sugar is regulated, that happens in that deep sleep between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. If you go to bed later, your sleep is definitely going to be disrupted, and you're not going to be enjoying the benefits of that deep sleep. And then you wake up in the morning, your body never had the chance to really heal itself, repair, recover, and regulate, which is what happens. Sleep is not just about rest, right? It's about all those things. It's about repairing the tissues, it's about recovering, it's about waste management. All these things happen in the earlier part of the night rather than later.
That's really interesting because people often ask me, well, as long as I get, a certain amount of sleep, like what if I go to sleep at midnight and I just sleep till 8 in the morning or go to
Mhm.
bed at 1 and sleep till 9? Isn't that the same thing? And so what I'm hearing you say is it's not the same thing, and you actually don't get as many cycles of the deep sleep as you need if you don't get started sleeping earlier in the night. Is that,
Exactly. Yeah, and
yeah.
we see people who go to bed after midnight that actually have higher fasting glucose the next day, right? Just
Hmm.
because they went to bed after midnight and they can have the same amount of hours of sleep and the same diet as other people who went to bed at 10, but the results will be completely different. So
I
timing,
think, oh, that is so interesting. Yeah, I love it. So timing actually makes a big difference for people. And when people are just looking at their numbers, So many times I have them, asking me things like, well, I ate the same thing, but my
Mm.
numbers are different, right? Maybe it's higher and I didn't do anything different. But the different thing might be even like how early they went to bed. Wow. I think that's really, really important for people to understand the impact that that has. Because we live in a society where so many people not only don't start sleeping early, but they might be using sleeping aids. They might be, doing other things that disrupt their sleep cycle, even besides what time they go to bed. But I'd love to hear from you. What are some other things that will interfere with people actually getting good quality sleep? Say they go to bed at 10. Are there other things that can affect that?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, caffeine. We
Mm,
must set a caffeine curfew. I always recommend about 1 to 2 p.m. being the last time you have your caffeinated drink. We have what's called a half-life. Caffeine has a half-life, which means that once you've had your caffeine, if you're looking 8 hours ahead, your body is still processing and metabolizing half of that caffeine. So the later in the
mm,
day you have coffee or another caffeinated drink, you're not getting that REM sleep. And it's funny because everyone will tell me, coffee doesn't affect me. I sleep really well. Well, you might think you're sleeping well, but if you are taken into a sleep lab, we would be seeing different things, right? Your brain is definitely not getting REM sleep. And like we said, it has so many effects. So that definitely is one thing that would affect you. The other thing is being indoors all day, exposed to artificial lighting. Most of us are sedentary or at home. If you don't get sunlight first thing in the morning or even at dusk, your circadian rhythm is going to be off. And if your circadian rhythm is off, your body really doesn't know day from night, and you're not getting that deep sleep. So just step outside at different times of the day. Your brain gets the message through the eyes, it will know. And I make it a priority to step outside first thing when I wake up for about 10 minutes to be out in the sun and then take an evening walk so that my body is completely aligned with that. I think these are really important things. The other thing, we mentioned Netflix, but any screens that you are exposed to at night, we are exposed to blue light. Our ancestors were exposed to fire, right? That's the red, the orange light. That's what we need. Our brain needs to see that orange light at night. So these warmer colors, so try and dim the lights and not be exposed to these heavily, heavy fluorescent lights at night, just to help the body kind of rewind and know. And also give yourself some meditation, some winding down activities. People don't do that. I know a lot of
mm.
people who work till late at night and instantly go to bed. It's not
Yeah.
going to happen. Even if you're exhausted, you're not going because you're wired. And if
Mm,
you don't allow the body to just gradually calm down and reduce that cortisol, you are not going to fall asleep. If cortisol's high, there is no sleep. And so I think these are some of the things that people need to really be aware of that are damaging their sleep.
mm. I think that's really important. It reminds me of some research that I saw about the importance of getting like mid-morning sunshine and it
Hmm.
actually affecting how much melatonin your brain makes at night.
True.
And I think that if we knew we could optimize production by simply spending, I think the recommendation was 30 to 45 minutes of mid-morning sunshine to actually really raise the peak production of melatonin early in the morning. Like I think it's like 1, 2 o'clock that we often get our peak melatonin production. And that is so important for our body to repair itself, to heal, and also to improve our quality of sleep. What are some other studies that you have seen or run across in your research that show us what they're learning as they study sleep that can help us improve the quality of our sleep?
So, one of the most important things, I think, like I said, that I see in all the studies across the board is cortisol. We live in this
Mm,
world where everybody lives on this fast pace. We're chasing, like, we're wearing so many hats during the day from managing work, taking care of our families, running errands, solving problems. We're always on the go. All the studies show that in order to get a good night's sleep, we must manage our cortisol. And I've been reading all these studies about the vagus nerve
Mm.
and how impactful it is to understand. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve that runs from the stem of the brain through the lungs and into our gut. And it is part of the nervous system. And when we can trigger it, then our entire system slows down, the nervous system. So, my favorite studies have been done on EFT tapping. I'm actually an EFT coach. So, EFT is emotional freedom technique, and it is an amazing mind body practice that is a combination of acupressure points that come from the traditional Chinese medicine, NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, where we rewire the brain while we say certain affirmations, and also CBT from the world of psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy. The studies that I see on EFT tapping, and there's over 350 clinical studies that show the benefits of EFT on everything from calming the nervous system down to reducing stress hormones and rewiring our responses to triggers. The studies show that using EFT tapping before bed has an increased effect on the quality of our sleep. You just sleep so much better. And that's one of the things that I've been doing to calm myself down before bed. And it has honestly proven to be great. And that's what I teach my clients too. EFT is something that I use in every coaching session. And it comes from their request, right? They need EFT, and it's not just for sleep. We use it for other things like cravings and pain and depression and anxiety. But those clinical studies definitely show the an incredible positive effect on the quality of sleep.
So I'm kind of curious about the CBT angle on it. What, how does that part work? Because I know that CBT in and of itself is really effective
Mhm.
when you're working with challenges like anxiety and depression. So how does that tie into the specific technique? I'm curious about that link.
Yeah, so what happens with EFT, there's a few phases of what we do. We want to identify the issue. So it could be somebody not being able to fall asleep or sleep. And we want to find out what's going on, and the person will tell me how they feel about sleep. Then what we do is we try and talk. So I will ask questions and figure out what's going on in that person's life, what they're thinking, what they're feeling. And then we create a script based on the technique that we have, right? And we use psychological elements in the script that I create. And on top of that, we add the NLP principles to create a script where we begin first by addressing what the pain points are. So we will address the pain points first and really trigger the amygdala, which is the fight or flight area of the brain. Then, once we have triggered that and we've brought everything, the pain and the frustration onto the surface, then what we're doing is we are putting in those positive affirmations from the world of psychology, right? And from NLP, and we're creating a calming of the nervous system. And so it's a very complex technique because it combines all these things, and there's 48 different strategies to use EFT. And so for every client and what they're dealing with, I will create the appropriate script using the components from each of those, from CBT or from NLP, and put it together. And so we could tap for 10 minutes or 30 minutes, and the person will be able to even tell me a number at the beginning and at the end where he assesses or she assesses how they're feeling before and after. And it's just incredible to see the difference using those principles.
So what I'm hearing is that much of what we experience on the emotional level in our bodies and that our nervous system then responds to is very much influenced by what we're thinking, by what we're telling ourselves. And it reminds me of one of the books that I know is used in some of the most successful depression and anxiety recovery programs in this country, which is called Telling Yourself the Truth. And that
Hmm.
we find that um, as we really focus in our thought life on things that are true rather than things we imagine and often are not true, or maybe were false stories that, got started in our minds because influential people young in our lives, when we were young in our lives, maybe they gave us messages consciously, intentionally, or not intentionally, that were negative messages about maybe who we are, what our value is, what our worth is, that those things can set up patterns of thinking that actually create negative emotional impacts, which then have a negative physical impact on, for example, our physiologic nervous system. And so, what I'm hearing you say is that you work with people to help them to realign their thinking with things that are actually true instead
Mhm.
of the lies many of us are trapped into telling ourselves and that push many of our behaviors that are negative or don't support our health. Am I hearing this correctly?
For sure. Like you said, exactly. And when we are brought up by the age of 7, we just absorb everything completely blindly from our environment. That's how we are shaped, right? Our beliefs are not our own. They're shaped by the people that we're surrounded by. If it's our parents, our grandparents, our educators, maybe it's the church or the synagogue. That's where we get everything and we believe it. And as we grow older, many of us don't stop and think, wait, are these really my beliefs? Is this my truth? Is this, have I ever checked it? Have I ever really looked into it? And we grow up with these limiting beliefs often that make us sick and make us doubt ourselves. And yes, and the beautiful thing about EFT tapping is that we can rewire the brain to think differently and to act differently. And with repetition, the brain is the neuroplasticity of our brain is an incredible thing because we can
Mhm.
reteach it everything by repetition. And I always tell my clients, your brain is listening. If you tell yourself, "I'll never lose the weight. I've never done this before. I've always failed." Guess what you're getting? You're never going to lose the weight. But if you start rewiring the brain by repetition every single day, telling yourself, "I've got this. I am already skinny. I am already fit. It's easy for me to do." Your brain is listening and it will adopt that new belief and create it in reality. And it's just amazing. It's all a matter of energy. It's all a matter of energy and we can change.
That is really interesting. And, I approach a lot of these areas of health from a very Christian perspective. I think about what are the Bible principles that kind of tie in here. And one of the verses that comes to my mind is that as a man thinketh in his heart, or as a woman thinketh in her heart, so is he. And so, like the root of much of
Mhm.
what we do in terms of daily choices, daily routines, and behaviors are very closely linked to what we believe, what we think in our mind. And by stopping to really pay attention to what are we telling ourselves, is it based on real truth or not, it really can make a huge difference in not only our mental health but our physical health. And I think that that is such an important area for us to remember as we're looking to move toward our personal goals in the area of health. Is like, let's not just address external behaviors, the things we're doing, but it's like, who are we actually being, and how does that line up with the value system that I consider to be truth? Like for me as a Christian, that's the Bible. It's like, how does this line up with biblical principles? Because there are principles that guide us in every area of life. And as we become more aware of those links, I think it can help us to be much more effective in using these these tools as we change our habits and our lifestyles for the better. So we have better blood sugars, better metabolism, all of those sorts of things. So I really, really appreciate the things that you've been sharing with us here today, Einat, because I think that we don't hear that enough. And understanding the power behind our thoughts and how it affects not only our sleep and our metabolism, but our whole nervous system, physical body is really great. And I love that you've given us a gift that people can go and look at to see if they want to use this as a tool to help them improve their sleep. I'm going to drop that link into the description for wherever you're watching this video. So that's where that is. And I would love to just ask you, like, as we think about wrapping this up today, what would you say if you had to say, like, what was the one biggest reason for us to really focus on having good quality sleep? For you, what do you think is the most important reason. What it really addresses some of the root causes that we've talked about today.
Wow, one, that's hard.
I know.
To me, sleep is the number one pillar that I teach because it affects everything in life. It all begins and ends with sleep. And I would say if you really want to live a full life where you show up in as your higher self and you can be there for the people who need you to serve better, make sleep your priority.
I love
Because
that.
serving is my first value. And
Mm,
if I can't be there 100% and serve my family, my clients, my community, what have I done? So that's why I focus on sleep.
I love that. And as you're listening, I want you to remember that health is wealth and it comes by choice, not by chance. So
Yes.
thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you.